It was an ordinary Thursday evening when my world turned upside down. I had just returned from my job as a systems analyst, a day like any other, filled with meetings and code reviews. Judy, my wife of 17 years, was in the kitchen, her back to me as I hung up my coat. The house smelled like spaghetti, a family favorite. It was the kind of aroma that usually made me feel at home. Safe. "Smells great, hun," I said, trying to steal a hug from behind. She stiffened, which was unusual. Judy turned around, her face unreadable. "We need to talk," she said, her voice lacking its usual warmth. My heart sank. "Talk about what?" I asked, even as I prepared myself for something minor, perhaps an issue with the kids or a complaint about my long hours recently. It's about us," Judy began, avoiding my gaze. "About me, actually. She paused, took a deep breath, and then met my eyes. "I have a date tomorrow night." The room spun slightly. "A date?" I echoed, confusion lacing my tone. "With who? Why?" "With someone from work. Clarence." She uttered the name like a confession. "I need to feel wanted, Sean. I need to know I'm still attractive to other men." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the woman I married, the one who promised to forsake all others. But why? Haven't I always made you feel loved? Desired? Judy sighed, a long, weary exhalation. "It's not about you, Sean. It's about me. I need this. For me." "But what about what I need?" I countered, my voice rising in spite of my attempt to stay calm. "What about our marriage vows?" She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Sean. I've made up my mind. It's just one night. It doesn't have to change anything between us." I felt a cold anger settling in my chest. "It changes everything, Judy. How can you not see that?" There was a long silence. I wanted her to say it was a joke, a terrible mistake, anything to make the moment unreal. But she just stood there, looking as resolute and as distant as ever. "So, what are you saying? Are we done here?" My voice broke around the edges. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know." I took a step back, feeling a rift growing between us, an insurmountable distance that hadn't been there when I walked through the door. The spaghetti on the stove bubbled over, unnoticed. "I need some air," I said, barely recognizing my own flattened tone. As I walked out, the cool evening breeze did nothing to soothe the burn in my chest. The night had fallen, and with it, the familiar contours of my life seemed to dissolve into shadows. I walked without direction, each step taking me further from the life I thought I knew. The next morning, the air between us was thick with unspoken words as we maneuvered around each other in silence. The tension hung palpable, like the heavy clouds promising rain outside our kitchen window. I sat at the breakfast table, nursing a cold cup of coffee, while Judy avoided my gaze, focusing intently on her cereal. The kids had left for school, granting us the privacy we needed, but neither of us desired. Finally, unable to take the silence any longer, I broke it. "We need to talk about this, Judy. Really talk, not just drop bombs on each other and walk away." She looked up, her eyes wary but resolute. "I knew you'd be upset, Sean, but I wasn't expecting. I just thought you might understand." "Understand?" I echoed incredulously. "How can I understand you wanting to be with another man? Help me understand, Judy, because right now I'm failing to see how this doesn't end our marriage." Judy sighed, setting her spoon down with a clatter. "I don't want to end our marriage, Sean. I love you. But I feel like I'm disappearing into this role of wife and mother. I need to feel like I'm more than that I'm still myself." "So you find yourself in the arms of another man?" I asked, the hurt evident in my tone. "It's not about him," she insisted. "It's about me. I need to prove to myself that I can still be desirable." "And what about me?" My voice rose slightly, a mix of anger and desperation. "What about my needs? Don't I deserve to be considered here?" Judy's face softened, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I married. You do, Sean. And I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. But you are, Judy. You're hurting me deeply. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. What happens after this date? What if one night turns into more? Where does it end? It's just one night, Sean. That's all I'm asking for. Her voice was pleading now, seeking my acquiescence. One night that betrays everything we've built together, I countered. One night that could destroy our family. Is it worth it, Judy? She didn't answer immediately, her gaze shifting to the window as if seeking answers in the rain-soaked world outside. If you go through with this, I don't know if I can stay, I said, the words heavy on my tongue. I don't know if I can look at you the same way, feel the same things. This might be the end for us. Tears brimmed in her eyes, and for a moment, I thought she might relent. But then she wiped them away briskly, a determined set to her jaw. I have to do this, Sean, for me. I stood up, feeling a profound loss enveloping me. Then you need to understand the consequences. If you do this, Judy, I'll see a lawyer. We need to think about what this means for everything. Our home, our kids, our lives. She nodded, a tear escaping down her cheek. I know. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, my heart breaking with every step. I hope it's worth it, Judy. I truly do. As I closed the door behind me, the sound seemed final, like the closing of a book. I walked to my car, not sure where I was going, only knowing I needed to clear my head and prepare for what might come next. The days following Judy's revelation and my ultimatum passed in a blur of cold interactions and sleepless nights. I moved to the guest bedroom, each evening echoing the distance that had settled between us. It was a Saturday morning, and the house felt unnaturally quiet. The kids were at a sleepover, giving us space that neither of us knew how to navigate anymore. I was sitting at the kitchen table with paperwork spread out. Bills, accounts, our marriage certificate, a tangible manifestation of our intertwined lives that I was now contemplating unraveling. Judy walked in, her expression guarded. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat opposite me, a silent acknowledgement that we needed to discuss our future. Sean, she began hesitantly, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about seeing a lawyer. I made an appointment for myself, too, for Monday. I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. I see. So, this is really happening? It looks like it, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't back down, Sean. Not now. I need to do this. For my sanity. And at the cost of our family? I asked, the hurt evident in my voice. She flinched but met my gaze steadily. I never wanted it to come to this. You have to believe me. I want to, Judy. I really do, I said, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. But it's hard to see past this decision of yours. It's like I don't even know you anymore. Judy reached across the table, her hand hovering as if wanting to touch mine, but unsure. I'm still me, Sean. I'm still the woman you married. I'm just lost, and I'm trying to find my way back. Pulling my hand away slightly, I sighed deeply. Maybe you are. But at what cost, Judy? At what cost to our children? She withdrew her hand, wrapping it around her coffee mug. I'm thinking of them too. Isn't it better for them to have a mother who knows who she is, rather than one who's just going through the motions? Not if it breaks their home, I countered. We sat in silence for a moment, the gulf between us widening with each unsaid word. I'll be honest with you, Judy. I've been thinking about what our separation will mean practically. We need to discuss how we'll handle everything. The house, the finances, the kids. My voice trailed off, the reality of the situation setting in. I know, she nodded, her face drawn. I've been thinking about that too. We need to be practical, for their sake. So, what's your plan? After Monday, after you go through with this? I asked, bracing myself for her answer. I don't know, Sean. I really don't, she admitted. One step at a time, I guess. That's not good enough, Judy. Not when it comes to our kids, I said firmly. You're right, she conceded. Let's sit down tomorrow, work out a plan. We can talk about custody, about the house. I want this to be as smooth as possible for them. All right, tomorrow, I agreed, my heart heavy. As Judy left the kitchen, I turned back to the paperwork, each document a reminder of the life we built together, a life that was now uncertain. Tomorrow's conversation would be decisive, one way or another. I knew I needed to prepare, not just the practicalities, but for the emotional toll this was all taking. The fallout was just beginning, and already it felt overwhelming. The weeks following the confrontation and Judy's decision to proceed with her plans were some of the toughest I had ever faced. Our home became a silent battleground, filled with unspoken resentments and forced smiles, especially around the kids. It was a Sunday evening, and Goldie and Wally were back from their weekend activities, their presence a temporary distraction from the ongoing tension. Hey, Dad, can we talk? Goldie asked, her voice tentative, as she lingered in the doorway of my temporary bedroom in the guest house. Of course, honey, I replied, setting aside the book I wasn't really reading. What's up? Goldie took a deep breath, exchanging a quick glance with Wally, who hovered behind her before stepping fully into the room. We've been talking, Wally and I, about you and Mom. I nodded, bracing myself. I see. What about us? It's just... Goldie paused, searching for words. It's just that we don't understand why you can't just forgive her. Mom explained she needs to do this for herself to feel good again. Isn't that important too? The question stung, a mix of innocence and accusation in her words. It is important, Goldie, but there are other ways to handle feeling lost, ways that don't hurt the entire family. Wally, usually the quieter one, spoke up. But Dad, Mom said if you loved her, you'd understand and try to get past this. It's just one night. She's not leaving us or anything. I sighed, feeling the gap in understanding widening. I know it might seem simple from what she's told you, but it's not just one night to me. It's a breach of trust, something fundamental in a marriage. And while I love your mom very much, what she's asking isn't something I can simply accept and move on from. But you're breaking up our family over it. Goldie's voice rose, a note of desperation creeping in. Can't you see that? If you just let this go, things could go back to normal. I reached out, trying to hold her hand, but she pulled away. Honey, sometimes things can't go back to the way they were. I wish they could, but some actions have consequences that are too big to ignore. There was a long pause, the air heavy between us. So what? Are you just going to divorce Mom and split us up? Wally asked, his voice cracking slightly. I don't know, Wally, I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. I'm trying to figure things out, but I want you both to know, no matter what happens between your mom and me, we both love you and your sister very much. That will never change. Goldie looked at me, tears brimming in her eyes. It already is changing, Dad. Everything is changing. As they left the room, the distance between us felt greater than just the physical space. It was as if my heart was being pulled apart, the fibers of our family unraveling with each passing day. That night, I lay awake, haunted by their words, by the enormity of the decision looming over us, and by the fear of losing not just my spouse, but my children too. The next day, I tried to engage with them again, to explain my perspective, hoping to bridge the gap of misunderstanding and hurt. But the conversation felt like walking through a minefield, each step fraught with potential missteps. The children's loyalty to Judy, fueled by her side of the story, painted me as the antagonist in a narrative I didn't recognize, a narrative where my pain and betrayal were merely obstacles to their mother's happiness. As the weeks turned into months, the estrangement grew. Conversations became more functional and less emotional, about schedules and necessities rather than feelings and healing. I watched helplessly as the bond I cherished with Goldie and Wally became another casualty in a battle I never wanted to fight. Moving into the small apartment was more than a change of address. It was a stark symbol of my new reality. The walls were bare, the rooms echoed with the emptiness, and every corner was a reminder of the life I'd left behind. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I finally finished unpacking the last of my boxes, setting a few personal items on the fireplace mantel, a couple of photos of the kids, a souvenir from our last family vacation, and a small framed quote about perseverance that Judy had given me years ago. The doorbell rang, pulling me out of my reverie. It was Marie, a colleague from work who had become a friend and confidant through the tumult of my separation. "Hey, Sean, how's the new Fortress of Solitude?" she joked as I let her in, trying to lighten the mood with a smile. "It's functional," I replied, managing a wry smile as I closed the door behind her. "Thanks for coming by." "Of course," Marie said, looking around. "It needs a woman's touch, though, doesn't it?" "Probably," I admitted, leading her into the living room. "But right now, it just needs to feel like home." Marie nodded, her expression softening. "That takes time, but you'll get there. How are you holding up, really?" I sighed, sinking into the couch. "It's tough. The kids, they're taking it hard. They don't really understand, and they think I'm just being stubborn." "That's gotta be rough," Marie sympathized, sitting beside me. "Kids see things in black and white. It's just going to take time for them to see the whole picture." "Yeah, time," I echoed, my mind drifting to my last conversation with Goldie and Wally. "I just hope they can forgive me eventually." "They will," Marie said confidently. "You're doing the best you can. And hey, you've got to take care of yourself too, you know?" I nodded, knowing she was right, yet feeling the weight of guilt that seemed to accompany every decision I made these days. Changing the subject, I asked, "How are things at work? I feel like I've been out of the loop." "Busy as ever," Marie chuckled. "But we miss having you around. Everyone's asking about you, hoping you'll be back soon." "I'll be back next week," I promised, feeling a semblance of normalcy at the thought of returning to my routine. "Good," she said with a nod. "They need you there. And I think you need it too. Something to keep your mind off things." "You're probably right," I admitted. "Thanks, Marie, for coming by. It means a lot." "Anytime, Sean," she replied, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "And if you ever need help decorating this place or just someone to talk to, I'm here." As Marie left later that afternoon, I felt a little less alone, a bit more grounded. It was true that the apartment didn't feel like home yet, but it was a start, a blank canvas on which I could slowly start to rebuild my life. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my work and began to set small goals for myself: join a gym, start a new hobby, maybe even adopt a pet. Each small step felt like a move toward reclaiming a sense of self, something I hadn't realized I'd lost along the way. One evening, as I sat alone in my living room, I picked up the phone and dialed the kids. The call went to voicemail, but I left a message anyway. "Hey, it's Dad. Just wanted to say I love you both and I'm here whenever you need to talk. I miss you." Hanging up, I felt the sting of tears. This new life was necessary, but it wasn't easy. Yet with each passing day, I found small comforts in my newfound independence and the support from friends like Marie. Maybe, just maybe, I thought, there was a light at the end of this tunnel. A few months had passed since I moved into the apartment, and I was slowly finding my footing. My routine at work provided a welcome distraction, and my evenings were often spent exploring new hobbies and occasionally meeting up with colleagues. It was during one of these casual outings that I found an unexpected connection. Marie had invited me to join a few people from the office for trivia night at a local pub. It was a Thursday evening, and the pub was bustling with energy and laughter, a stark contrast to the solitude of my apartment. "Hey, Sean, glad you could make it," Marie greeted me with her usual warm smile as I approached the group's table. "Thanks for the invite," I replied, surveying the group. I recognized most from the office, except for one new face. a woman with an easy smile and an infectious laugh. "Oh, let me introduce you," Marie said, noticing my curious glance. "This is Emily. She just joined our marketing team last week." "Nice to meet you, Sean," Emily said, extending her hand. "I've heard a lot about you. All good things, I promise." I chuckled, shaking her hand. "Glad to hear that. Welcome to the team." As the night progressed, I found myself drawn into the lively banter and challenging trivia questions. Emily proved to be a fierce competitor, and her quick wit and knowledge on a wide array of topics impressed me. During a break, as some went to order another round of drinks, I found myself alone with Emily at the table. "So, how are you finding the job so far?" I asked, genuinely interested. "It's great, though quite the learning curve," Emily admitted. "But everyone has been incredibly welcoming, which helps a lot." "I'm glad," I said. "It can be tough starting somewhere new. I remember my first weeks were a whirlwind." "Yeah, I can imagine. It's the same everywhere, I guess," she said, then hesitated slightly before continuing. "Marie mentioned you've been going through some personal stuff too. I hope you don't mind me saying, but if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." I was taken aback by her kindness and openness. "Thank you, Emily. That means a lot," I replied, feeling a warmth spread through me. The conversation shifted back to lighter topics, but Emily's offer stayed with me throughout the evening. As the weeks turned into months, Emily and I grew closer. Our coffee breaks at work became a regular thing, and we often spent them walking to a nearby park, discussing everything from work projects to personal philosophies. One crisp autumn afternoon, as we sat on a bench watching the leaves fall, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Sean, I've noticed you seem a lot more settled lately. Whatever you're doing, it's working for you." I smiled, looking out at the colorful foliage. "I guess I'm finally starting to accept my new reality. It's been hard, but having friends like you has made it a lot easier." "I'm glad to hear that," she said sincerely. "You know, I went through a rough patch a few years ago myself. Divorce as well. It's never easy, but sometimes it leads you to a better place." "I'm starting to believe that," I admitted. "It's just the kids. That's the part that still gets to me." Emily nodded understandingly. "It will take time, but they'll see the truth eventually. They'll understand why you had to make the choices you did." "Thanks, Emily," I said, feeling a sense of gratitude for her empathy and support. "Your friendship has been a surprising gift through all of this." She smiled, a warm, genuine smile. "Likewise, Sean. And remember, no matter how tough it gets, you're not alone." As we walked back to the office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Emily's friendship was indeed unexpected, but it was also proving to be one of the most significant supports in my journey of rebuilding my life. As autumn turned into winter, the cold weather seemed to mirror the chilly distance between me and my children, Goldie and Wally. Despite my efforts to maintain our bond, our interactions remained strained, polite yet devoid of the warmth we used to share. It was a Sunday afternoon when I decided to make a more concerted effort to bridge the gap. I called them up, hoping they'd accept my invitation for lunch. "Hey, Goldie, Wally, I was thinking maybe we could grab some pizza this afternoon? Just us," I suggested, trying to keep my tone light and hopeful. There was a pause on the line before Goldie answered, her voice cautious. Sure, Dad. That sounds okay." "Great. How about I pick you up around noon?" I replied, grateful for the opening. When I arrived at their house, the familiar sight of their home tugged at my heart. Goldie and Wally were waiting outside, dressed warmly against the crisp air. The drive to the pizzeria was filled with small talk, school activities, their friends, and some of their plans for the holidays. It wasn't until we were seated at a booth with a large pepperoni pizza between us that I decided to delve into deeper waters. "Guys, I know things have been different since your mom and since we decided to change things," I began, carefully choosing my words. "I just want you to know how much I love you both. Nothing will ever change that." Goldie looked at me, a trace of the old fondness in her eyes. "We know, Dad. It's just hard, you know? Everything feels so messed up." "I understand, honey, and I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this," I said sincerely. Wally, who had been quietly picking at his pizza, finally spoke up. "Why can't you just come home? Things were better then." The directness of his question stung, but it was a fair one. "I wish it were that simple, buddy," I replied softly. "Your mom and we're just not able to be the best versions of ourselves together anymore. But that doesn't mean I'm not always here for you both. I hope you believe that." Goldie nodded slowly, while Wally seemed to contemplate my words. I reached across the table, offering my hands to them. After a slight hesitation, they each placed a hand in mine, a gesture that filled me with both sorrow and hope. "Can we try to do this more often? Just hang out, maybe do some stuff we used to?" Wally asked, looking between Goldie and me. "I'd like that very much," I said, a smile breaking through. "Anytime you want, just say the word." As we continued our meal, the conversation gradually became lighter, touches of our old camaraderie peeking through. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a start, a step toward healing the rift that had grown between us. On the drive back, Goldie, who had been quiet, spoke up. "Dad, can we maybe do Christmas together this year? Just like old times?" The question caught me off guard, but it was a welcome one. "I'd love that, Goldie. Let's plan on it," I replied, the thought of spending the holidays together warming me against the cold drive. When I dropped them off, I hugged them both a little tighter, a little longer. "Remember, I'm always just a phone call away, for anything." "We know, Dad. Thanks for lunch," Goldie said, giving me a small, genuine smile as they headed back inside. Driving away, I felt a mixture of emotions swirling within me. The road to reconciliation might be long and fraught with challenges, but today had shown me that it was possible. The effort was worth it, and I was determined to do whatever it took to mend our family, even if it could never be quite the same. As the year drew to a close, the stark bareness of winter seemed fitting, mirroring the introspective mood that had settled over me. It was during one of these long evenings, sitting by the small fireplace in my apartment, that I reflected on the tumultuous year. The flames flickered, casting a warm glow that seemed at odds with the coldness that had pervaded much of my life recently. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I answered, recognizing the number immediately. It was Emily. "Hey, Sean, just checking in. How are you holding up?" Emily's voice was always a beacon of warmth. "Hey, Emily. I'm doing okay, just reflecting on everything that's happened," I replied, watching the shadows dance on the wall. "Reflection is good, but don't let it weigh you down. Remember, renewal is just around the corner with the new year," she said encouragingly. "You're right," I agreed, a small smile forming. "Actually, I've been thinking a lot about renewal, about starting fresh, not just in terms of my personal life, but in rebuilding relationships, especially with Goldie and Wally." "That sounds like a positive step forward," Emily noted. "How are things going with them?" "Better, I think. We're planning to spend Christmas together. It's a small step, but it feels significant," I shared, the flicker of hope in my voice mirroring the flames in the fireplace. "That's wonderful, Sean. I'm so glad to hear that. You're taking the right steps, no matter how small they might seem," she reassured me. Our conversation drifted to other topics, but Emily's words stayed with me long after we said goodbye. The idea of renewal, of not being bound by the past, but instead looking forward to what could be rebuilt, was empowering. A few days later, during Christmas, as I decorated the tree with Goldie and Wally in my apartment, the sense of something new being forged was palpable. We laughed and reminisced, the earlier awkwardness slowly dissipating like the winter frost under the morning sun. "Dad, this looks really good," Goldie commented, stepping back to admire our handiwork with the tree decorations. "Yeah, it does. Thanks for helping me make this place feel a bit more festive," I replied, grateful for their presence. "It's nice being here with you. I think we needed this," Wally added, his tone reflective. I agree, and I hope we can have more days like today. I know things have changed, but I'm here for both of you, always. We can create new traditions, new memories, I suggested, hopeful. I'd like that, Goldie smiled, and Wally nodded in agreement. As they left later that evening, the warmth of their hugs lingered, filling the cold space with something that felt a lot like healing. Sitting back down by the now dying fire, I contemplated the year ahead. The journey of healing and rebuilding was far from over, but the steps taken, however small, were leading me, and hopefully my family, towards a renewed sense of connection and understanding. The fire had reduced to embers, casting a soft glow that no longer fought against the darkness. In its warmth, I saw a metaphor for my own life. Even amidst the remnants of what was, there could be warmth and light, a signal of beginning anew. It was not just about moving on, but moving forward with purpose and renewed hope. This year had taught me about resilience, about the depths of my own strength, and about the power of forgiveness, both in giving and receiving it. As I looked forward to the new year, I felt ready to embrace whatever came my way, armed with a deeper understanding of myself and the relationships that mattered most. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. If today's story resonated with you, or if you've experienced similar challenges in your relationships, remember you're not alone. We hope this video offers some insight or comfort as you navigate your own path forward. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We value your perspectives and would love to hear your stories too. Join us next time for another profound exploration of the heart's resilience. Until then, take care and keep seeking your truth.